Welcome to the In My Opinion show with Ronald Barry Robinson and friends. We have Mr. Henry Hatter.
Welcome, Ron.
Welcome, Henry. We have Ms. Denise Smith Allen. Welcome all to the In My Opinion show. Free speech. Supreme Court weighs funeral protest case. Supreme Court justices, in a rare public display of sympathy, strongly suggested they would like to rule for a dead Marine's father against fundamentalist church members who picketed his son's funeral, but aren't sure they can. Left unresolved after an hour-long argument that explored the limits of the First Amendment, does the father's emotional pain trump the protesters' free speech rights? The difficulty of the constitutional issue was palpable in the courtroom as the justices weighed the case of Albert Snyder. His son died in Iraq in 2006, and members of a family-dominated church in Topeka, Kansas, protested at their funeral to express their views that U.S. deaths in Afghanistan and Iraq are God's punishment for Americans' immorality and intolerance of homosexuality and abortion. Thank God for dead soldiers. This is a cry from a religious group headed by 80-year-old pastor Fred Phelps of the Westboro Baptist Church in Topeka, Kansas, that pickets soldiers' funerals and taunts their families, saying they believe God is punishing troops for Americans' tolerance of homosexuality. This church group also is anti-Catholic because priests are pedophiles. They're anti-Semitic because Jews killed Jesus, and anti-American because this nation is home to all these heathens. The Supreme Court has a long and sometimes painful history of protecting offensive speech. Although the court has famously said that you can't shout fire in a theater if in fact no fire, and that the First Amendment does not protect people who intentionally incite violence or panic, their words must withstand the court's clear and present danger test. That's why in 1969 in Brandenburg versus Ohio, the court declared that a Ku Klux Klan leader could not be fined or imprisoned for hate speech at a rally that did not encourage immediate acts of lawlessness. Likewise, in 1977, the court affirmed that neo-Nazis could march in Skokie, Illinois, a town that was home to many Holocaust survivors, because its residents would not be incited to riot by the sights of swastikas on parade. By the same logic, it seems unlikely that the court would conclude that seeing a Westboro protester holding a "Thank God for Dead Soldiers" signs at military funerals would lead to public mayhem. In my opinion, I would not like to see our First Amendment rights to free speech touched in any fashion, but what I would like to see is that religious practitioners such as Fred Phelps think about the hurt and outrage suffered by those families of fallen soldiers that have given their lives for his country, and understand that they are protected by the same Constitution that he and his followers are. P.S. On the other hand, someone needs to put a foot up in his ass where the sun doesn't shine and prevent the consumption of all that snake oil that this preacher seems to be ingesting. Henry, what's your thoughts?
Well, thank you, Ron. I think that's a very good subject for us to undertake this afternoon. But, you have to be careful about when you try to impede freedom of speech in the United States. Is one of those basic frameworks of protections that we have under the Constitution. And it protects all people, irrespective of their race, their age, or their genders. And it allows us to sit here and do this. It allows us to attack other people that don't look like us. It allows us to make accusations. It allows us to speak against them. It allows us to downgrade any efforts that they have that is not important to us. So I believe that in all cases, the freedom of speech has to be protected. Now, with respect to the pastor here, who is making all of these brash statements, I think that they're sarcastic remarks. I think that they're shocking he is getting the reaction that he wants. He wants you to feel that way. He wants you to feel threatened. He wants you to feel embarrassed. He wants you to feel alienated. And you have all of these kind of feelings, so it's working. But for most Americans, they just slough it off. Because as long as it doesn't immediately result in an action that somehow impedes our thoughts or our beliefs or our safety in any way, we just simply discount them. So on the other hand, there's something wrong with what he's doing. Because we do have our basic beliefs, and those beliefs are personal and very important to us, and very sacred to us. For example, some of us believe that the loss of a life, for whatever reason, is a very bad thing to have happen to anybody, whether it's a member of our family or whether it's a member of somebody else's family. So what this does, it reeks at those basic beliefs, and it makes us angry. But it doesn't hurt us anyway. So if it doesn't hurt us anyway, it's just in our head, it's like an abstraction, then we have to get over it and not tamper with the freedom of speech. And I don't see this man as a real threat. I think that people will listen to him for now, and then they'll move on.
But you know, this guy is also an attorney, and he's also a pastor. And you would think that, you know, that his code of ethics, especially him being an attorney and him being a licensed preacher, would dictate otherwise in terms of their speech. I don't understand, why anyone would say, thank God for dead soldiers. Denise, what is your thoughts?
Well, I hear you say about his credentials in terms of him being an attorney and also being a minister, probably a licensed minister as well. But that doesn't preclude the fact that he could also be a nutcase. Mm-hmm. Okay? And I think if we give him too much power, case in point, in Florida, the minister who had planned to burn the Quran, the Qurans, okay? So we gave him power. And we need to not give people like that who are mean-spirited power. You don't.
Well, this is the same
power.
preacher.
Well, this is what I'm saying. This is power that we don't need to give him. Okay. I think when they showed his church, I looked at the congregation, there were a lot more empty seats than there were full seats. So if this is basically family members and all of that, have been indoctrinated with that venom, then, just the idea that, we have allowed this thing to become broadcasted and it's taken a life of its own. That was hurtful. That was mean-spirited. That's the only thing that I can think of. And, eventually, after the media played that whole thing up, it died down, and he decided not to do it. So he got his 15 seconds. He got his 15 seconds of glory. But what bothers me is the fact that perhaps now, he may have gotten some new recruits. So that's troubling. That he's gotten maybe some more people who may have the same ideological thoughts. But I think that Henry made a good point about the freedom of speech. We have that law enacted to protect people, and America has been real good with all of their extreme behavior in terms of allowing people to say things back in the 70s when they were burning the flag and they were doing all kinds of things. This has always been tolerated by America based on the tenet of free speech. Personally, I think in this regard that especially when you're talking about soldiers who have risked their lives to go overseas and fight a war that they're not really even aware of why they're fighting, but lost their lives and their families grieving, that locally there should be ordinances in place to not allow those persons to be within the purview of the actual funeral procession. They should just not be allowed to do that. Now, if they want to protest, that's their God-given right here as an American, but not in front of a grieving family. And that would be my thought, that they need to have an ordinance in place locally to handle that.
Ron, you also
Exactly.
made a very good comparison with the Ku Klux Klan and those other groups. Now, we know that they've been in Chicago, they've been in Detroit, but the system tolerated them. And they made individual groups mad, and they may have overreacted. And that was the intent of the Klan when they staged it. Because they allowed, they brought about a cause that would cause the other side to overreact. And then they get their way. When they can get you to overreact, they get their way.
Mm-hmm.
And but guess what? We still survive. We don't see them quite as much. As long as you just let them go and do what they want to do without in any way hurting the Americans, you let them have their 15 minutes of fame, and then they move on. Because to do it a second time, people are not interested.
Mm-hmm.
The first time it's good, and then the next time it's not interested.
Any further thoughts on that?
You know, I just say, you know, we've got all kinds of people that make up these United States, and some are nuts.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of wackos in this nation, well, all around the world for that matter. Education is a basic civil rights and human rights of all children, as well as the key to America's economic health and future. Do you believe public schools in your area provide equal learning opportunities to every child? In my opinion, I think they could do much better. When you have a 30% graduation rate in many urban communities and an educational system rated 25th or worse in the world, when only a few years ago our nation was in the top 5, we have to deal with a hell of a lot better. First, we must set strict criteria. No child left behind was a good start. Now we must move into the next levels. Get rid of the bad teachers by any means necessary. Get rid of the bad administrators by any means necessary. Give productive schools, teachers, monetary or other incentives to help them maintain their proficiency and enthusiasm. Build in standards by which they can be evaluated every 2 years. This means the old teachers and the new teachers. Set a mandatory retirement age for teachers, say 62. This is the age that they would more than likely be eligible for Social Security. This would enable new teachers with new ideas and 21st century visions instead of the old 20th century outdated materials now being taught. Henry, this is right down your alley. What do you think?
Well, Ron, I don't think that you have to raise the retirement age to 62. Many teachers are ready to get out of there as soon as they get to 30 years in.
Mm-hmm.
Believe me, it's a challenge to teach in public schools. And schools have lost a lot of what they had back in the 50s and 60s when they had control of the classroom and they were the ambassadors for their classroom and they had their own ideas of what a good classroom ought to be like. But now today, you don't have that. Teachers have lost the ability to control the classroom because the kids have rights in the classroom. And that's okay, and they should have these rights. But when kids come to school and not prepared to learn, and some kids are behind. If a child has not been read to at the age of 5 and that child begins kindergarten or first grade, that child's behind. And this has been proven over and over by think tanks and subjects that are close to, and subject matter experts that are close to the subject. And they can show you statistically that kids in urban areas have been left behind. Now how you correct that, I don't know. Parents have to become engaged. Every parent should spend time with their kids. Every parent should direct their kids. Every parent should have expectations for their kids to make sure that the kids are meeting the learning standards in the classroom, or at least there to learn. And we don't see that in the classroom today. We see a lot of kids that are just in the classroom just to be there, just because they're forced to be there. And so our ability to produce the kind of students today to maintain dominance in science and education and math and technology, we don't see that. we have to import people from the outside, from Singapore, from Japan and China and Scandinavia, just to fill up this big void between where we're performing and where we need to go. You're exactly right. We do need we need a new resolve and new expectations. We talked about that. This is not the first time that we talked about this subject, and I think that we all agree that there are those of us people in the community who have the influence and the success rate and within their own profession to exert pressure on the system, or at least create a plan of where we would like to see our kids in 5 years. Let's say for the Flint school system, we would like to see our kids in 5 years. We would like to see 10% of them on the honor roll throughout all the school districts. That would only mean there are 84,000 kids in the area schools, and 10% of those are about 10% of those are black. So 10% of 80,000 would be about 8,000, something like that. And then if you wanted 40% of those to be on the honor roll, then obviously that would be about 34,000. But we don't have those kind of expectations. This is what we have to strive at to improve our production in the black community. The white community is doing quite well. And you know something, honestly, to tell you the truth, and I don't like to talk about this because it always sparks, gives sparks to these
Let the sparks fly.
But it is urban schools that give education a black eye.
But why is that? I mean, all my children, all right. I got two that are in college right now. I got one that's in the 4th grade. Now they've all been to different schools, all right. Now, why is that disparity there? Okay, whenever I walk into when I walk into my daughter's school right now, I don't see all this confusion. You know what I mean? The schools are clean, and they're orderly. The students are respectful. The teachers and administration is respectful. You know what I mean? It's been that way all the way down the line. Mm-hmm. And my children have been to urban schools. I don't send them to private schools. None of them. All right. I don't understand. Why this is happening.
Because the community doesn't expect for our kids to do anything more than what they're doing now.
Yeah, but there's a lot of low-income families that go to my children's schools.
Yeah, but you see, if we don't have expectations for our kids, and we all make excuses that there were slaves 200 years ago, that doesn't help the child. But what you want to do is to put expectations on kids, because we can compare these kids with Africans from Africa who live 25 miles from a railroad or a main road just to get to a town or something. But yet these kids come to the United States after going to school in Africa and perform well in colleges and universities. They don't care what kind of test you get. You can give them a test from Louisiana or Iowa, or you can give them one from Detroit, and they don't care. Mm-hmm. Because those kids are prepared to learn. They want to learn. They want to be here. But if you just take a survey, walk through some of the schools, and just observe, and get permission to sit down in the classroom. Look for yourself, and then perhaps you can encourage a group to sit down and talk about what we need to do with the dismal state of African American learning.
Well, I've been to 2 or 3 of the schools,
it's not the kids' fault.
And it's like a zoo.
Kids are very capable of learning. These kids are in the prime of their life, just a sponge for learning. But they are not inspired, and they're not encouraged. They're not treated like they are loved and stuff like that. Teachers have control of the message. Our teachers will teach their kids in Flint schools have control of the message, they have all of the power, they have the resources, and they have the challenge. Now, if they are not doing that, you know what you need to do?
Get rid of them.
Yeah.
Well, Henry, I believe I agree with you to a certain point, because the biggest challenge for teachers today, particularly in the urban area, is resources. And really, the resources are lacking. Some schools have had takeovers because they haven't had the financial backing so that they can take care of the kids' basic needs. So that's an issue.
What's the basic need?
Being able to have books that are updated, having a classroom that is not dilapidated, windows that are not broken out, and those kinds of things. That's basic. When a child is coming to school, particularly in the urban areas, and particularly in some of the high crime
Remember,
areas.
I'm an urban area graduate.
Yeah, but
So am I.
let's talk about when. We're talking about now, okay? That was then, this is now. And the issue is for a lot of these kids, particularly if you take a Chicago or even a Flint, you got kids that have to get past certain places in order to get to school. First, they're coming out of a home perhaps that nobody was at home to see if they even had homework or went to school because they didn't care, okay, for whatever reason. They're not there. So they're, self-motivation, it works to a certain point. But when we're talking about elementary school kids now that have seen and experienced so much, and then have to go into a classroom, and then they're dealing with kids that are acting out. They themselves may act out, because of some of the stuff that has happened to them. And then you're dealing with dilapidated schools, no resources, no after-school programming for these kids. I mean, go on and on and on. So it is a setup for failure, okay? So, we really need to take a look at, okay, we know this system is broken. Some schools may have to actually be just closed. They just may have to be closed. Some teachers may just have to be let go. Now, I'm not in favor of seeing anybody lose their job, but do your job. Do your job. And that's the thing. And so these evaluations and different things are coming about, and so change is good, but some change is going to leave some people behind. Okay, so that's where I'm at.
Denise, I know, and you made a good point, and I'm glad that you are calling me on this. But I want to submit to you that if you take your kids in a classroom and give them to me and let me take them home, 10% of them will be on the graduation honor student.
Yeah, come home with you.
10%.
Yes, and I hear you. You say if I can take them home with me,
just take them out of that out of the school system where the teachers have all of the resources. They have the message, and yet I can take them to my school, even in the poorest condition, and 10% of them will be on honor roll.
Yeah, because the message is gonna start at home, and then you're gonna go to parent-teachers conferences, you're gonna show up at PTA meetings, you're gonna engage in the school and make the school do what it needs to do.
Now you got the picture. I'm sorry, that's the picture I was hoping that you get. You made my point. Thank you.
I got it.
And there's a message that we just sent out to school districts. Yeah, okay.
But even in the urban communities, how do we insist? And I'm listening to both of you. Parental involvement, et cetera, et cetera. But our educational system is lacking in so many ways. They're not teaching, like the core subjects: English, math, science, social studies. All right, like it should, like it should be. When I was in school, we didn't have policemen walking the halls or security guards walking the halls.
Because you had basic things going on at the house, and you were taught respect. You wouldn't think of rearing up at an adult at the school. It wasn't an issue. But right now, these kids, we have metal detectors. Why? Because they're bringing weapons.
It's ridiculous.
So, like I said, this whole thing is broken. It's not just the schools. We can't just put it on the schools. We have to talk about what's going on in the community. And the community has a major issue right now with our young people don't feel the value for education, because once they get educated, where is it going to take them? Where do they think it's going to take them? In their minds, they don't believe that education is a vehicle for their success. Okay, because a lot of them really don't think they're going to make it past 25 or 30 years old. They're going to get what they can get now, and a lot of them will do it by any means necessary.
Okay, we can attribute that to what people, what society allows, which is impossible to stop, but what they read, what they see on television. All right, the styles that they see these entertainers do and actresses do and wear, and all the glamour and this and that whatnot.
Everything that a kid is looking at, whether it's on TV, any other medium, has to be filtered by an adult that has some type of wisdom and reasoning to help that child understand, because otherwise that child may take that to think that this is what I need to do or I want to do, because they have no other discussion other than with their peers. And their peers, are all of them probably going to agree that this is cool, this is the thing that I want to do. So they need somebody there, whether it's a parent or a teacher or someone in the community, to say, there's some other ways of handling a situation, or there's some other ways to look or to conduct yourself, and give them a well-rounded view of the world, because right now it's pretty one-sided.
Hey, Ron, just real quickly, by contrast, in Clio, we have twins. They're both headed, one of them is going to be valedictorian in a tough, competitive environment. The other is high honors. And I was so proud of them. They got a chance to meet Robert Young, the Supreme Court Justice, on Monday.
Well, give them a holler. What's their names?
I don't know whether they can get their names out.
Okay, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
True.
But but you can come over to meet them anytime. You can invite them to the show. If you want to invite them to the show.
Sure, absolutely.
And ask them how can we. With I'd have to have Denise here so they won't get beat up.
Okay. this has been a great show, but at this time we must bring it to a close. But first, we want to thank all those that make it possible, and especially our viewers. Until next time, this is Ronald Bay Robinson and friends saying, stay focused. But remember, hold fast to your dreams, for without them, life is a broken-winged bird that cannot fly.